Penguins' next two opponents, as in the next two opponents that they're going to be facing in the next 48 hours, each have 5 wins. Now, I'm not saying that as if the Penguins should be looking down their noses at anybody since they've only got 6 wins. Good morning to you. Good Friday morning from Columbus, Ohio. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. It'll be Penguins versus Blue Jackets here tonight at Nationwide Arena. And it'll be a game just like the one tomorrow night back home at PPG Paints Arena against the Sharks that your favorite hockey team had better win. Now, when I say that, I don't mean to inject actual suspense into a season that probably lost that a good bit ago. As early as it is, it's not too early to say, oh my goodness, are they not making the playoffs for a third straight year? Because it isn't just the 6-9-3 record. It's the defensive breakdowns galore. It's giving up more goals than anyone else. It's giving up more shots than everyone else. This isn't exactly some tough luck stretch that the club's run into. The club's been exactly this bad. But, if you happen to be, as the people inside the Penguins' orbit apparently still are, a believer that this season could still amount to something, that whatever it was that happened a week ago today in Washington wasn't a fluke and could be replicated against any team they face all winter long, then these 2 games, my friends, are for you. These are the ones that either sustained the illusion, or if you're being kind, sustained the reality that they're not that far out of anybody's mathematical playoff picture, which they aren't, by the way. 3 or 4 wins in a row, and they'd be right back in that mix. Or if you just happen to be one of those people who's like, let's just get this over with. Let's make this as bad as possible so that the moves that need to be made go right ahead and get made. Whether that's firing the coach, whether that's trading this player or that player, whether that's dumping contracts, whether that's bringing up as many kids as you can fit on the same bus across I-80 from Wilkes-Barre, up to and even including trading Evgeny Malkin, trading Chris Letang, and in turn, probably by doing one or both of those, trading a certain someone else who might not want to be here anymore. Whichever way you happen to feel about this, it's going to play out here tonight and back home tomorrow. And maybe not even just through the results. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Think about this for a second. Go back to that game against the Red Wings a couple nights ago. And forget that they lost 3-2 in overtime. Forget that they had the big comeback from 2 goals down. And, forget really everything about it except for this one thing. How did they look to you in the first period? How did the Penguins look to you in the first period? Did that look like a team that had spent the better part of that day and maybe the day before that saying, wow, can't believe that Dallas game happened. Can't believe it. Got to find a way to bounce back. We got to lay it all out there. It's got to be like the first day of the playoffs, because if we don't take care of this team and then the Blue Jackets and then the Sharks, we're done. We've had enough of being... No, you didn't see any of that. I could have carried that on for a while, by the way. You didn't see any of that. Nobody out of the 16,000 people inside that building saw or even sensed anything of the kind. And take it from someone who was in that building watching from above, at least from my own perspective, what actually occurred was that the game gradually found some wheels. The Penguins and the Red Wings each accelerated the other's pace over the course of 60 minutes. It just so happened that the Penguins found a little bit more confidence offensively and did a better job of creating than the Detroit guys did. But there wasn't any, here we are, this is our statement to the world. There were a handful of players, and no more than that, who competed at that type of level on the Pittsburgh side. And just so I don't sound like I'm cutting up on everything for the sake of cutting up on it, I'll name a name. Brian Rust, not just because of the nature of the goal that he scored, which was just beautiful. Did you see his celebration after that? Did you see the way he skated over to the glass after he pumped his fist and everything? That's not a normal Rust goal celebration. He doesn't usually do that. He'll do stuff like that in playoffs. But he was trying to get everybody going. He was trying to get the crowd going. And why was he having to try to do anything of the kind? So if you don't see that in the first period here in Columbus tonight, and you don't see that tomorrow night back home against the Sharks, first period I'm talking about, if you don't see a team come out looking like they had just spent a lot of the previous hours really focusing in on this, then honestly, what are we even doing here? What are we delaying? When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from Bill Boyd, who says, DK, it really stinks to lose Lars Eller, but is it possible that the $2 million in cap space that gets created might allow Kyle Dubas to make the broader moves needed to shore up the more overarching back-end issues at hand? I know $2 million isn't much related to the whole salary cap, but it is hard to know if there was a method to this madness, right? I tell you what I like the most about this question, Bill, and why I chose it. Because as I see it, this is where Dubas is right now, even if he doesn't want to be. This is where Dubas is right now, even if he's secretly or subconsciously got some backdoor exit from all of this, meaning going the full rebuild. Because when you trade a guy like Eller for a couple of draft picks, one of which you won't even make for another 3 years, you are, whether you want to or not, sending a message to your locker room that you and this season in front of you, you don't matter. The season doesn't matter. And that, of course, flies in the face of everything that would have been discussed between Dubas and Sidney Crosby specifically over the course of this past summer. So my guess, and that's all this is not reporting, this is just a pure hypothetical, would be that even though Dubas doesn't need to explain anything to the on-ice captain of his hockey team because of the extraordinary circumstance, because Sid just signed a 3-year contract at miles below market value, because Sid had been told by Dubas and, of course, via extension by the Fenway Sports Group that we're going to do everything we can to make sure that you've got a competitive team around you, that Dubas would then say to Sid, well, yeah, we got draft picks. We wanted draft picks, but we also got cap space. And yes, of course, we're going to try to apply that cap space toward another player who can help right now. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, you said this yourself, Bill, but $2 million, you and I would take it in a heartbeat, but it's not going to get you a whole lot of defensemen. Not to peel a fresh scab or anything here, but Dubas needed $2.75 million to get Matt Grzelcyk to come to the Penguins and be terrible. So what do you do with that cap space? How do you make it work for you? Do you try to trade what you might deem to be a bad contract for somebody else's bad contract, only theirs would be a little bit more expensive, so you find a way to make the deal work or get them to throw draft picks in. For example, do you trade Tristan Jarry, who most definitely has a bad contract, to some other team that's paying a decent defenseman more than they'd care to be paying him now and into the future, and you try to make the salaries match, but it's easier to do that because you've got a couple million in cap space. That's more likely. I'm going to repeat the disclaimer here. That's not something I've heard. That's something I'm just randomly throwing out here. I'll always try to make that distinction clear. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins today, all week long. Be back with another one of these on Monday.